Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Southeast Region RAC meeting. Meeting here on August 3rd, 6:30 p.m. John Wesley Powell Museum in Green River. Thankful for everybody that came. We're kind of few in number in person tonight, and we have a few online, so go through and just a roll call of who all's here in our meeting. Here we have Kirk Player is here. We have Stephen here, Stephen Duke. We have Eric Luke is here in person. Myself, Dana Truman is here. And online, it looks like we have Lynn and Brad and Charlie and Darren. Is that everybody online? I guess nobody has spoke up otherwise. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. The RAC procedure, when we get into our action items, we'll have questions from the RAC, and then we'll go to questions from the audience, if any, and it don't look like we'll have any of those here. And then we will have the comments from the audience, if any, and the report from the online comments from Chris Wood, and then we'll go to RAC comments and voting on those items. If you have any questions, let's keep it brief as much as we can and to the point. First off, we have to approve our agenda and minutes from our previous meeting and the agenda for tonight. Any discussion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Kirk. Any discussion on the motion? Do we have a second? Okay, second from Eric Luke. All in favor?
Aye.
Charlie, Darren.
Aye, in favor.
Okay, Darren.
Yes, I approve. Aye.
Okay. Motion passes unanimous. And I think going into the other ones, I'll just go ahead and take a roll call of whoever's here, online and in person. Then that way we'll just make it go a little bit smooth.
We've lost the Southeast Region link. We're standing by with technical issues.
Delay, everybody, a little bit of technical difficulty. Appreciate everybody that works hard to keep us up and running. Right now, we're to the Wildlife Board meeting update from the June 2nd board meeting. This was dealing with upland game recommendations. Kind of keep it pretty close to, well, keep it as short as I can here. With regard to the fall turkey seasons, there was a couple of motions. One of them failed, one that was to allow an either sex hunt, but that failed for lack of a second. The motion that came out was to have one either sex on private, no public land and cap those tags at 25% less than last year. There was concern over the drought conditions and declining turkey numbers, and that passed the board unanimously. With regard to air guns, there was a motion to recommend the list presented by the division to be legal if the legislature adopts some kind of a habitat tax or something to attach to those air guns. And if the legislature fails to do that, there will be no hunting allowed with air rifles. And also they recommend that the legislature be fairly heavy-handed with that tax in order to incentivize Pittman Robertson kicking in on that. And that passed the board unanimously. And then there was a motion to allow the Parker Mountain hunt for sage grouse, and that passed unanimously. And then there was also a motion to approve the remainder of the upland game recommendations, and that passed unanimously. And then there was also a motion on the landowner rule to remove preference points for landowner appreciation tags. Currently they use preference points with them. That was voted on and that was unanimous. And then there was a motion to approve and have the division or committee bring any changes through the RAC processes for the September 29th meeting on landowner rules. And that passed unanimously as well. And that's about the size of it for the wildlife board meeting. And now we have our regional update, and that'll be Chris Wood, our regional supervisor.
Okay, here we go. Good evening. I think I have a presentation ready to be shared here in a minute, but thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for those who couldn't make it but are here virtually. I think we have 4 RAC members attending virtually, and also with us is virtually is Guy Wallace. If we have questions for him tonight, he can chime in. Makita Hansen, our habitat managers, here tonight, and so is Adam Wallerstein, our officer that covers the Moab Grand County area. So just a quick regional update. It's been a hot, busy summer, but some good things to report. All right, habitat. Our habitat section has been, every year we get our WMAs ready for the fall. On several WMAs, we have water rights that we exercise our rights on, and we put in crops. We farm and plant, and we've been doing some of that this summer. I mentioned at our last RAC meeting that we have a committee formed to work on the Sego trailhead. That's still happening. They've met several times in the last month or two. Kent Johnson, Trish Hadeen, a few others in our area are on that committee that our biologist, Cade Lazenby, is heading up. And looks like we're working with the tribe, of course, and Sitla, who owns the land. We're working on an MOU with Sitla, and which is an agreement. And then we'll hopefully get some work done next spring. It looks like it'll be when it'll be open for and enhanced a little bit. So there's a lot of ideas going around: new kiosks, more areas to camp, better access and better direction and better flow. All those things the committee's addressing. Habitat's also working on a stream restoration project in Mudwater, which is south of Schofield. Our outreach section has 2 events coming up the next month. These are going to be 2 really good events. Reptile and Amphibian Night will happen on August 19th in Moab. We did that last year, I believe, and we had a great turnout. More information about that will be coming out soon. You can sign up to these events on our Eventbrite website. It's not listed yet, but it will be soon. If anyone here is interested in that event, let me know. I'll make sure you get notified. We also do a bat night. That's going to be September 9th in the Moab area. Scott Gibson will be a big part of both of these events. He's a great educator. Exciting to go to one of his demonstrations or classes, and he'll capture bats and teach us all about bats bat night. So more information to come. Patrol in the mountains, mostly. That's bear pursuit season, so I've been busy with that. We've also been down to the Navajo Nation last week. As you're probably aware, we have an agreement with the Navajo Nation, and we honor some of their historical traditional hunting areas. And through that, we set aside 270 deer tags, and we go down to the nation every year, every July. We visit 3 different chapter houses, and if the Navajos are a member of one of the Utah chapter houses, they're able to buy a deer permit and a combination license so they can hunt in Utah. And we did that last week, and it was a success. Our wildlife section's been busy. They've been classifying elk and bison on the Henrys this week, and then they're also doing mountain goat classifications on the LaSalles. Scott's been busy doing prairie dog work and bird surveys, doing some rabbit surveys. They're also working on CWMU renewals. I also should mention that the statewide elk plan committee continues to meet. There's a meeting tomorrow. Kent Johnson and Tricia Dean are representing our region and are part of that. Kevin Albrecht also attends the meeting. I think they have many more meetings to go. They've already had lots of meetings, and they have many meetings to go. It's a big project to tackle, but the committee's doing a great job and making progress. I should also mention that this month, the statewide bear plan committee will convene for the first time. I've been asked to facilitate that group, and so I look forward to that. I think this RAC will be interested to know and happy to hear that we have 6 or 7 members on that committee from our region. Both, I think Kirk's going to be on that, right? Kirk Player. The Forest Service biologist from Moab will be on there. Sunshine will be one of our non-consumptive reps on the committee. And, Dustin Mitchell will be on there as well. I'm missing a few others. There's a houndsman from Blanding that'll be on that committee also. So we're excited about the representation because we know that in the Southeastern region, we can grow bears, and we have bears here. And so our voice will be needed and appreciated. Our aquatic section has been doing rotenone treatments on the LaSalle's the last few weeks. That's an exciting project that's been years in the making. We're also doing some Green River sampling. And I also want to mention that we have a new biologist. He oversees our AIS monitoring surveillance type program in the southeastern part of the state and the central part of the states. So he's out taking water samples with his crew all summer long, trying to detect whether any invasive species, quagga mussels, are detected in any of our waters. I'll mention that the biologist that we hired is Kyler Stilson. Maybe some of you recognize that name. He's from Emery County. And I often get asked, by especially younger teenagers or people in their 20s, how can I work for the Division of Wildlife? How can I become a biologist? And I think Kyler is a great model to follow. That he worked for us for 3 or 4 summers, really hard, proved his worth, changed positions a little bit, got a lot of experience, got a degree from USU Eastern in wildlife, and was very, very competitive when he interviewed, and we offered him the position. So, yeah, he's a great hand, and we're glad to have him on. Great mind. So, and then finally, probably some of you have heard, Pam Riddle passed away a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, probably. Pam was the BLM biologist in the Moab area at the Moab field office. She was fantastic. She served on this RAC for 8 years. She was a great partner to have. Did a lot of great work for wildlife. The Moab field office, I just imagine all the applications that go through that office for development and trails and recreation and all kinds of things. And she was a great advocate for wildlife and made sure that resources were protected. I think of the conservation work that she did with bighorn sheep and pronghorn specifically. And really what she was really good at too was getting BLM funding for guzzler work in southeastern Utah. And I don't have a number, but she must have, because of her grant writing and her ability and her understanding of the system, she was able to funnel hundreds of thousands of dollars in personnel and equipment and in-kind money to the southeastern region for guzzler work for bighorn sheep and pronghorn. So she will be missed. Her legacy continues, and I wanted to pay tribute to a great biologist in Pam. And that's all I got. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Where specifically are you treating LaSalle's with rotenone? Is it just certain lakes, or is it the creeks, or what?
It's the creek that has the cutthroat trout in it. That there's a special species of cutthroat in the LaSalle's. So those creeks, we're trying to protect. We took out a cutthroat. LaSalle Creek specifically this year. Yeah, there's a series of creeks we're going to treat in the next few years. This year it's LaSalle Creek.
So you removed as many of those cutthroats as you could, and then
We did that last year. Yeah, we have a brood stock in our hatchery that we're growing. And so we'll rotenone treat it and then restock it with the same fish that were in there.
was there something else in there? Was there other fish in there? I never seen anything other than those in it.
So they didn't treat,
Wait, I'll have you speak in the mic, Adam.
they didn't treat the creek that the cutthroat were in. They didn't treat that creek. So that creek still has all the cutthroat, but we pulled some cutthroat out of there last year and sent them off to the hatchery to get, to start providing bird stock for us. So they were treating the other creeks, LaSalle Creek and a few other little creeks there that get rid of the brook trout. And then we'll be putting those cutthroat in.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Chris, I don't have a question, just a comment. Above Monticello, they've done a lot of habitat stuff, the mastication there on the Forest Service.
Yeah.
I just got to make the comment, private landowner did the same process last year, 2 years ago. And it is unbelievable how much that is being utilized right now. It is incredible. So I am really, really encouraged by all that mastication work that's happening. I think if it follows what that private land stuff, there's going to be some really nice habitat there. So
Is it the pinyon juniper or oak brush or what is it?
yeah, pinyon juniper stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, the private land stuff is just through verdure in between Monticello and Blanding.
Mm.
It is being heavily utilized right now by deer and elk. And so to see all that's been done, I just was so happy to
That's
see
good to
that.
hear. That's great
Yeah.
to hear. Thanks for that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Next, we have our item 5, our first action item is the land use rule amendments. And Chelsea Duke is here. Cool. All right. Do we have any questions for Chelsea from the RAC?
I have a question. Kind of help me understand the reasoning behind the e-bike restrictions. And I guess not only the classification, there's class 1, 2, and 3, but also is the concern for that destruction of the land, or is it more something else?
It's a great question. E-bikes is one of the things we talked about a lot when we were looking at this rule. So the first thing I will say is in the previous version, in the current version of the rule, motorized vehicles wasn't defined. We talk about motorized vehicles throughout the rule where we say they're restricted to roads and existing trails, but we never defined what that meant. So when we were looking at defining what a motorized vehicle was, we were looking at what's going on right now. What are people utilizing right now? And e-bikes came up. We also discussed it because the waterfowl management areas just put a restriction on e-bikes as well. And so we decided to fold that into our definition of motorized vehicles. We wanted to make sure that that was in line with the waterfowl rule, which was to exclude class 1 and just include class 2 and 3. And so we decided to include e-bikes as a motorized vehicle because, just like you said, because of the effects that we are seeing on the landscape. E-bikes are very easy to create new trails and cause a lot of destruction when they're not operated on an existing trail or road. So that was our reasoning.
Okay, thanks. And follow up, was there any discussion about limiting a normal bicycle? Because in my mind, I don't have an e-bike, so I have no skin in the game, but in my mind, an e-bike is no more destructive than a normal bicycle. To me, a normal bicycle has narrower tires. They sink farther in the soil, potentially creating more places for erosion to start. So was there any discussion about limiting the normal bicycles in certain areas?
There really was. We looked long and hard into that. And, when we start restricting bikes, mountain bikes, then are we saying, okay, now are we going to restrict horses? Are we going to restrict this or that? And so we thought that was too slippery of a slope, but we also wanted to maintain in the rule that each WMA and each region can sign for a restriction, and that holds up just as much as the no motorized vehicles. So if there is a property, like we have this problem a lot in the central region and the northern region, where we're seeing a lot of trails being created, they're not authorized, we're seeing a lot of habitat destruction, that WMA can be signed against all bicycles, and that still holds up just the same.
Questions from the audience? We don't have any comment cards from the audience. And you have online comments,
Yeah, well, kind of.
kind of? Okay. Well,
So for question one, I just had two people respond. There were no comments from those two people who responded. And those two people, so 100% of them neither disagreed or agreed with the proposal.
Wonderful information. It makes it easy for us, though. Nothing to debate. I guess I have a comment about the use of bicycles. I think as far as the destructiveness, I appreciate your comment where, where do you go with horses or whatever else? But I think socially, there are areas that we need to keep bicycles out of. There's some stuff needs to be kept primitive and left primitive. And, foot travel, hikers, backpackers, equestrian use, that's primitive and traditional. And bicycles are, for one reason or another, antithetical to that. And I'm not against bicycles. I rode the wheels off of several of them as a kid. But just, is that something that's been talked about in the committee with this, looking at it from the social aspect of it as well?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, we've talked about it a lot about where's that line versus, we all know that these properties are for wildlife, they're for habitat and wildlife. And it's been tricky to draw that line between our traditional users of hunters and anglers and then the influx of recreational users or non-consumptive users. So it's something that we are going to continue to talk about because we are seeing, particularly in the central and northern regions, some of the impacts that recreational use has had on the WMAs. Specifically for now, what our plan of action is for those areas that we're seeing increased use is to sign and make sure that each of those WMAs is being managed on a case-by-case basis. We didn't feel at this point that a blanket statement was necessary.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear the division's not taking a one-size-fits-all approach because it really doesn't. Thanks. Any comments from the RAC? Did you have something, Nikita?
Yeah, I was just going to maybe add, as the Regional Habitat Program Manager, I really appreciate some of the guidance that the lands use rule gives us, but also the flexibility that allows us. And just as a reminder, when we do our habitat management plans for our wildlife management areas, those come back to the RAC for discussion and approval. And that's where we start identifying if we want to close trails to bicycles, things like that. So that always comes back through the public process when we start making recommendations for our habitat management plans. And then also, yeah, I just think, like you mentioned, all of our WMAs are different. I know in one of the other RACs, it was mentioned that they wanted to close all camping on WMAs, but just specifically in our region, we have a WMA that kind of provides a walk-in access type situation. And if we didn't allow camping there, then it wouldn't provide the same sort of recreational opportunity for harvest of wildlife if we were to close camping down on that WMA. So I think this rule is very helpful for us to provide guidance, but the flexibility for each wildlife management area is super important for us in the region to manage our lands.
Thanks, Makita. That was a really good addition.
Any comments from the RAC? Well, if there's no comments, we'll entertain a motion. Don't make me be a smart aleck again.
I'll make a motion to approve as the division recommended. How do I say that better? I would like to approve the action item as the division presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Dana to approve the land use rule amendments as presented,
I'll second it.
seconded by Kirk. And we'll do this roll call because we have so many online. Kirk,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
and Darren.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. And we're on to the fun stuff, the proposed fee schedule. Kenny Johnson. While he's coming up, I guess, any questions from the RAC? I have several. Actually, it's kind of
I have a few.
more or less one, but go ahead, Eric.
I have a few, but
Before we jump
do
into
you
it, can I?
have something that you want to clarify?
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to mention a couple things that I failed to in my presentation, just as I was putting that together. The first is we did a fairly significant increase to non-residents couple years ago in 2020, and I thought that word had spread a little further into the resident ranks, and apparently it hadn't. And so I just wanted to make sure that as a starting point, we did bump them fairly significantly a couple years ago, and then a little bit again this go around. And so I wanted to mention that, as well as just our approach to the process overall. I think it's important to know that, from our standpoint, from my perspective specifically, our fee schedule and our approach to the various fees has been very successful. It's a proven successful model. That was our basis for looking at fee adjustments. I think we've been very fortunate to be in the position we are and have our fee structure cover our costs on the ground for a lot of years. And certainly we haven't done anything really significantly for residents in almost 10 years by the time this would go into effect. And so just wanted to mention that. And then our starting point was kind of looking at everything top to bottom to modernize, since we haven't changed anything for so long, just kind of modernize the whole thing, start at a 10% increase. And then we looked kind of categorically at different species and fees to try to make sure they were right-sized compared to other opportunities within the state and then some of our surrounding states as well. So just wanted to bring that up before we get too deep into the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That kind of answers some of my question. I just made some notes here and run some numbers as I read through that. I looked at the increases, the percentage increases were pretty much all over the map. And that I questioned that. And I'm sure a lot of people would if they sat down and put a pencil to it, but you indicated that you're trying to come in line. So we're kind of samey with surrounding states. Is that the objective there?
Yeah, to be in line and then still be competitive, and then kind of, the one big example is kind of right sizing our big bird opportunity, the swan and sandhill being the same as turkey across the board, just kind of trying to standardize those. Was the idea.
I have a specific question for one thing. With our resident 7-day fishing permit, why a 50% increase?
Our idea there, Kent, is to more, we feel like our fee structure is more valuable when people pay the little bit extra and have a full 365 days. So we've always wanted to try to convert short-term buyers into full season buyers, gives them a little more value, gives them something to look forward to year round, and doesn't just end in a week and be over with. So we were trying to kind of nudge that toward buying a full season. And then on top of that, a multi-season or a multi-year, I guess would be the better term there. And
that was my my assumption was that might be you're trying to nudge people into just buying a regular annual fishing license, but I wanted to just ask the question. And then I think that kind of covers my questions. Most of them you've already answered with your statement there and clarifications, and thank you for that. Any other questions from the RAC?
I got a few. Do we know how many non-resident youth bought licenses or hunted in Utah last year?
I could get to those numbers. It just depends on what specifically you're looking at. If it's, the fishing stuff I have readily available, and I think I might have a little bit of the deer breakdown if I can get to it. Did you have a specific one you want to?
Well, probably more interested in the big game or hunting licenses, but I just curious how many there was that would fit in our youth category.
For non-residents specifically?
Yes.
It's a really small percentage. I mean, non-residents are already kind of restricted closer to 10%. And then the youth percentage of that is even smaller. So,
Okay. Other question, do we know how many resident combination licenses were sold last year?
yes, I have that right here. It's let's see.
If
Is
it's,
it-
if
is
it's
it long
convenient,
list?
can you tell us the non-resident combination
Yeah,
as well?
yep, I have both of those. Forgive me while I dig this up really fast. I've got all the extension versions of everything too, so it's a little bit lengthy to get to it. But it looks like just resident combinations for 365 days, about 105,000. And then it looks like the multi-year versions of that on top of that, another 20,000 more, plus the senior version of that too, another 13,000 on top of that.
And non-resident?
Oh yeah, and then non-resident. Non-resident, just the pure 1 year is about 10,394. And then it looks like on top of that, maybe another 12 or 1,300 on the multi-year and extensions.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see on the list, the fee list, the current price of the Cougar spot and stock permit.
That one, it's currently $30, and we were proposing no change to that one this time around.
Okay. And I believe I heard last night you said there was just over 1,100 of those spot and stock tags sold last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Yeah, I believe Charlie had a question.
Yeah, I got kind of two questions here. One, I might just not know this, but how often does the DWR review its prices of tags and make sure that it's meeting the needs of the division, both residents and non-residents tag prices?
So we are always looking at that. We kind of look at revenue and expenditures every year during our business cycle. And so we're always looking at that and considering it. And we've been really fortunate to not need to increase. Kind of revenue has trended along with our cost to do business pretty well over the years. And so we're in a pretty fortunate place to not have to do anything for a long time. And so as revenue started to decrease a little bit in the face of some increasing expenses, that's kind of what brought us to here. And so, like I mentioned, we're looking for a little bit of revenue. The modest increase overall is about $5 million. And we hope we can, well, hope's a bad word. I got called on that last night. The math indicates we can survive on that with this little bit of an increase for another, we're hoping 4 to 6 years. And so we just look at the needs on the ground with our revenue coming in, and that's how we determine that. And then when that happens, we do consider where we sit with all of the western states, for sure, the surrounding states, and making sure we're competitive. And
Okay, I asked just because it'd be nice for sportsmen to know, like, every 5 years their tags might go up or go down, or every 10 years, like you guys made it 10 years last time, which I think is excellent. But it's nice for sportsmen to have an idea of when those tag prices will go up. And then I guess my second question, you've answered a little bit of it. 4 to 6 years, you think it'll be before you have to increase tag numbers. If inflation is just kind of steady out and go back to that 2.2% that it's annually at, what prices would you have to increase tags to make it another 10 years?
that's a good question. One, just overall, it's hard to speculate just because, things are kind of wild out there in that market, and we don't have a lot of say there. It depends on a lot of factors there, but you'd probably be looking at maybe doubling what we've asked for here to ballpark it. And that's just a wild guess. That's not very scientific from the podium, but I would imagine somewhere around double that price of what we're proposing now. So, if things continue, if they continue like they have the last 2 or 3 years, who knows what that world would look like. But if it trends a little more steady, then I think we could stay ahead of that better. And that's why we anticipate just the change now for pushing us into 4, 5, 6 years into the future.
And then just to clarify, you're talking about increasing, so doubling the increase on top of the tag prices you already have, not doubling the tag prices, period.
Oh, correct. Yeah, just the proposed increase. Correct. Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay. Yeah. No, it'd be great to see this be an every 5 or 10 year thing, just so sportsmen would know, and if we could figure out how to make that happen. Obviously, with inflation and how it is, hard to tell. But
Any other questions from the RAC? Questions from the audience? Do we have any comment cards from the audience? Online comments?
All right. We had 6 respondents to this survey question. 50% strongly disagreed, 17% somewhat disagreed, and 33% strongly agreed. You all received these comments. I'll just quickly go over kind of a brief summary of some of the comments that we got. Says, I support the division's increase in fees. They also recommend that the division increase the dedicated hunter permit to $300 and only allow 1 buck harvest in the 3-year program. A concern that DWR's prices were increasing too drastically, and that you're going to, hunters will not be able to afford the increase in permits, especially with increase in ammo and fuel prices. A respondent asked DWR to find other ways to generate money and don't increase the fees for Utah residents. They asked that non-residents pay more and have a higher increase than what is proposed, just like the other Western states have done. One respondent said there's hasn't been any improvement in the fisheries in Southeastern Utah. Another person said that if you're going to increase our fees, don't you're increasing our fees and we're also losing rights. For example, trail cameras. One person said, I support the division fee increases. These fees are needed to properly manage our wildlife. And they believe that the proposal is adequate and support it, the proposal. And then a person said that they support the fee increase. However, they'd like it to be at the lowest level possible to fund the agency. They mentioned it in the central RAC. There was a talk about proposing increasing the fees to levels above what the division was proposing. And they thought that that was going too far. And that they would not support any additional fee increases above what the division is proposing. That's all I got.
Okay, we have one public comment. Tanner Carlson.
Tanner Carlson, representing SFW. Just want to thank you guys for your time tonight. SFW works closely with the division, and we're thankful and support the fee increase. We know the division's trying their best to take care of wildlife and habitat here in the state. It's time to raise prices a little bit. It's not out of line, and so we support the division. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I have one comment about this myself. One thing that probably needs to be understood by everyone is in Utah, at least, I can't speak for every other state, but the division is funded with rare exceptions for specific projects that are designated by the legislature for the division to do for everybody. Then the legislature will fund those projects. Outside of that, the division is funded by hunters' dollars through Pittman-Robertson tax and through the sale of licenses within the state of Utah. And I think that's unique and that gives us also as hunters and anglers, we get the biggest say-so in what happens with our wildlife because we are the ones paying the bills. And occasionally things happen where the bills go up and we may not like it. It's difficult and it's a bitter pill to swallow at times, but I think with their presentation, the division has showed us, hard numbers of what they need, and they're trying to stay at a minimum level of increase just to make ends meet, so to speak. And I appreciate the work they've done at that. And I just wanted to make this comment and make sure people understand that sometimes it is necessary, but we're going to have to swallow this on occasion in order to continue to just fund the division with only hunters' dollars. That way, those who are paying the bills get to help make the decisions. Any other comments from the RAC?
I'll just add one little bit on there. As you were talking about the air rifles, it makes me proud. And it's the only one that I can think of. I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's the only one that I can think of in recent years where a group said, yes, please tax us, and that's exactly what happened even with this. It's a very small thing, but with the air rifles, and that's what happened way back when we started these excise taxes, and we get the benefit of that. And so I hope we keep that same mentality so our children and our children's children also have that benefit.
Thank you. And I think it's wonderful that hunters actually step up and we act to be taxed and we willingly pay for these license fees for the benefit of all wildlife. This is wildlife that we can't hunt or consume, but it's out there for everybody to enjoy. And I'm glad that we pay for that. Eric?
I work for a construction company and I deal with dollars in every project that I do. And when the cost of business goes up, you have to increase your prices. That's just the way it works. And, we're all feeling the pinch of the inflation and it sucks that we have to further feel that pinch as hunters. But I excuse me, I think that it's, very necessary that, and not, I don't think it's out of line at all. I support the fee increases. There's a cost to doing what the division does. And I think that there are a few things that I would like to maybe propose as some potential changes as we get going here. But all in all, I do support the fee increases. I got a couple more comments, but I'll open it up for somebody else and if they want to.
I just want to add, I'm very supportive of the increases. In fact, in my opinion, I think I would rather see the division err on the side of doing something longer term and increasing it even more. I'm a hunter and I can go out and hunt deer for 7 days or however many days, and I spend more on sunflower seeds than I spend on a tag, to be honest with you. I spend more on cokes than I spend on a tag. To me, the cost is really extremely low. And if it meant that I paid more, that hunters paid more money, and it gave the division more flexibility to where they had to make a decision about how many tags they're issuing, they're in a tough spot. If it gave them more flexibility in how they manage, I would be as supportive as can be to increases even more than the proposed that you're offering right now. I would not have a problem with that whatsoever.
Any other comments from the RAC?
Couple of follow-up comments based on the questions that I asked. I know last night in the Southern RAC, there was a proposal to create a non-resident youth tag, because right now those youth basically pay the same as the adults when it's non-resident. It's a small number, so I don't think it has a large impact on your overall budget, but I think it does good things, not only for the youth, but also for the state, because when those youth get a tag, their family comes here, they spend money here, and the state benefits. So I do think that it would be a good thing to create that youth tag that basically is it's the same cost as our resident youth. I believe that's how the proposal was last night, and I agree with that. The other thing that I think we're missing a potential here is with our Cougar tags. Right now, the spot and stock permit's $30. And there's only 1,100 of them sold last year. I really think that if that number were, say, $10 or $15, I think that 1,100 goes to a substantial amount more, because people will, if they have a deer or an elk tag, if we allow them to purchase a spot and stock Cougar tag for a smaller amount, more people will buy it. Right now, I think $30 is, some will obviously pay it, others won't. It's a little too steep. And I really think that will generate more revenue. And I also believe that we won't impact the number of cougars significantly at all, because the success rate is so small. I also think that our regular Cougar tag is probably priced too high. It's more than a deer tag, and basically same as an elk tag. And with harvest objective, again, there's a set number of permits there. It will affect your budget slightly, but I think that probably needs to be back down to $30 range as well. That's just, those are the things that as I went through the list of things, I also spent some time comparing our non-resident fees with other states, and particularly Wyoming. I think for me, that's one of the higher states, and we're right in line. So the other thing I guess I just wanted to mention was I appreciate that the division, looked out for the youth and for the veterans and not raising those fees. So thanks.
Any other comments from the RAC? If we have no other comments, I'll entertain motions.
I want to make a couple of specific motions just before we get to the big one. And that is the first one. I'd like to make a motion that we decrease the price of a spot and stock Cougar tag to $15. And I guess along with that, I could make this the same motion. I'd like to see the Cougar tag, the harvest objective Cougar tag, also drop to $30.
Can we ask questions about that? Okay, so on the, I guess maybe it's asking the division, do you know of, I know it's putting you on the spot, but like what was the rationale to set it at 30? Is it in line with other tags or?
That's a great question. I don't know that I was involved in a lot of those discussions. Some of that's structure and some of it's fee and revenue, and they do generate some revenue, and I think we are okay to meet in the middle somewhere on some of that now.
Right. And then on the suggestion for like the general Cougar permit, why would you take it down to 30?
For me, and everybody's different. Some may value a cougar far more than a deer or an elk. For me, that's not the case. Cougar's a predator. Elk and deer are bread and butter. It's what generates the biggest revenue in the state. I just have some heartburn about paying more for a cougar tag than I do for a deer tag or as much as an elk tag. So
just kind of maybe a comment on that, that could be a great idea. I get hesitant to support such a drastic change because I know predator management's complicated. And I know that predators can help us have healthy deer and elk populations. So when you make a big change like that, how does the repercussions then go on to the animal and to wildlife management? But that's just a question, I guess.
Well, and someone else can maybe chime in here, but my thoughts and my rationale for making that motion was, I don't think that it impacts the cougars by changing the fee. Number one, the number of tags for harvest objective are set. So it doesn't change any of that. But with the spot and stock, there is potential if more people have them, but the success rate is so small. I think that's a very insignificant effect on the overall numbers. I don't think that changing the fee has really any biological effect.
You're right. I'd forgot that the harvest objectives were set. It just seems really drastic. So, yeah. You're
Just
right.
put.
Yeah, I would probably not make that motion if I felt there was a big biological effect, but
And can I just add something really quick? I appreciate the discussion on that. Just adding some quick math, it's about a $79,000 difference on the bottom line, cutting it almost in half. So just something to think about as you're looking at that one.
yeah, and that's, I understand that and, I think as a RAC, we have a responsibility maybe to try and make that up. And I don't know where we make that up. And
Yeah, that's,
so,
I'm not saying you have to dollar for dollar, just wanted to, a big
yeah.
number. That's kind of what it is. So.
So Eric, maybe you won't buy a Cougar tag at the current price, but it sounds like other people do. I don't know. Are there a lot of unsold Cougar permits? I doubt it.
Well, the harvest objective
Right.
Cougar permits are unlimited.
Yeah. Well, I'm just
They're
saying, but people are buying the tags,
Some are, but.
but
I mean,
Eric won't.
the one thing to think about in this discussion is, and to Eric's point, is reducing taxes has been shown to stimulate economic growth. The less expensive something is, the more likely somebody is to buy it. That we know. Walmart is the most successful retailer on the planet, and they sell everything as cheap as they possibly can. And so, to Eric's point, I believe there probably would be more people buy them, but I don't know how many more, because a lot of people that already want to hunt cougar are probably buying the tag and paying the price anyway. But the spot and stock ones, in addition, it's one you're able to buy in addition to a deer tag, if you're already on your unit and just buy a spot and stock, those sales will probably go up if it's less expensive. I would agree that they will go up probably a lot.
And I do have a Cougar tag in my wallet.
I guess my only question with that, it makes sense to me. It does. I think there's a lot of people that would, if it was cheaper, they would just say, I'll just buy one just to have it, just in case. I guess my question is, will we be spinning our wheels without first talking to the predator management biologist? Would they have a perspective on that? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. If that's something that we need to consider before we do that, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's not part of our meeting today, but if this got proposed, I bet he'd be asked to be ready to respond to it at the board meeting.
Yep.
Do we have any other discussion on the motion or a second? It looks as though the motion will fail for lack of a second. Do we have any other motions?
I do want to make a motion that we create the non-resident youth permit that would coincide and reflect with the age group and the fees associated with the resident youth.
I'll second that one.
We have a motion by Eric and second by Kirk. And just so I get this right, the motion, you want the non-resident youth permits. Is this across the board or just the combination and hunt or hunting license to be the same as a youth resident permit? Is that correct? Or is that an across the board everything?
Were you thinking more deer and elk on that one?
Yeah, it's the deer and elk, the big, the big game. That's my concern.
Okay, so general season deer and elk and the hunting and or combination license.
Correct.
Okay, so you want to read what you got there, Chris?
Yeah, I think I have to make combination and deer and elk non-resident youth permit fees the same price as resident youth fees.
General season or general and limited entry? Just general season only. Make sure you get that in there. Okay, we have the motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, this is Darren. Can you tell me, how does that change from what is current? Just remind me, what is the current situation?
The youth, the non-resident youth pay the same as the adult non-resident fees currently.
Yeah, so fishing, non-resident youth fishing, we have proposed an increase there from $6 to $10 and from 29 to 34 on the 13 to 17 age. And then let me look at deer. So that one is currently, sorry, takes me a minute to navigate through this thing. 398, proposed to 418 is the current non-resident price for that one.
I'd just comment, Colorado, I think their youth tags for deer and elk are about $100. And I have put my children in every year until they turned 18. And then when that price changed, I quit putting them in.
Yeah, that's exactly why I support it. You get their money and nobody gets to hunt and it's a win-win. And I mean, it's the only good thing we maybe learned from cigarette companies. If you get them hooked when they're young, then they'll come back and they'll keep giving us their money, so.
As long as you keep supplying the product to them.
At this point, products.
If there's no more discussion on the motion, Kirk,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Charlie,
No.
Darren,
Yes.
the motion carries. We have one no vote. 7-1. Do you have any explanation for your no vote, just in case I have to bring that up to the Wildlife Board, Charlie?
Sure. Yeah, I've got a lot of, well, first off, I want to say I got a lot of respect for Eric. He comes to these meetings very well put together with a lot of information, watches all the other RAC meetings. So sorry that I think it's this one and the air gun. I've both kind of not been on your side for that, but it's not against you. It's just the way it is. But we're raising prices here on residents, and I think some of the feedback we got was we want to raise prices on non-residents, and although Steven said he stopped putting into for Colorado because his tag prices went up, I don't think that's the majority of folks. I think you're not looking at your son or your daughter and saying, well, your tag price is too much, so we're not going to Utah this year. I think a lot of times these are done together as family trips, and I think that non-residents are kind of expected to pay more money going into a different state.
Thanks, Charlie. Okay. Looks like that pretty much takes care of our meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, that's right. Right. Duh.
That's right. Good.
I need psychiatric help. We do need to take care of the rest of this agenda item. Do we have any further motions? I got way ahead of myself.
That's right.
I'd like to make another motion. It's very similar. I would like to make a motion that we drop the price of the spot and stock Cougar tag to $15. I'll leave out the general Cougar tag. Is that okay to make that motion? It's slightly different. But I do think we're missing the boat there, because I think that the increased sales will more than offset the cut. So I do want to make that proposal.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of maybe value in that proposal. But I guess I'm just surprised to hear that $30 seems steep. You know, I guess I'm just like, I'm not sure why 15 seems like less steep, because $15, you know, just, I mean, the opportunity to do spot and stock is so fun. I think it's worth $30.
Well, and I think for, you know, $30 for those that really want to do it is not too much. But I think that, like Steve said, I think that if there's a point there where people will say, yeah, I'll buy that just so I have one just in case while I'm hunting. But if that is too high, they won't pay that extra. And that's where I think that that's where we increase the sales, are those that are wishy-washy. The ones that want to go do it, they'll pay the $30.
And we have a motion. Do we have a second? Going once. Going twice. Motion fails for lack of a second. Any further motions?
Eric, do you have a third motion? Third time's the charm?
You made me feel bad.
Well, I was just going to say, some of the other RACs discussed the hours for dedicated hunters, and we haven't. Like before we make a motion to approve the rest of the fee structure, I just wanted to make sure we had talked about everything that we wanted to.
What was that? I didn't hear that.
The hours for dedicated hunter buyback?
You can increase in the dedicated hunter buyout.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
To $40, correct? Yeah,
Correct.
$40 an hour to buy your hours out.
Some of the discussion has been, some folks think that that's too much because it's too hard to come up with projects. And so people need to have that option to buy it out. Personally, I think that, you know, the dedicated hunter program was set up to provide services and projects in the field. And I know at least around here, and it may be different up in the city, but around here, we've never had a problem getting projects, and I think that's the way that the program was set up, and I support the increase.
I agree with Eric.
I do as well, and next spring, we're gonna have a lot of work for somebody to do at the top of Sago. So, I mean, there's always something going on, and people can talk to Chris or Makita or anybody else at the Price Division office. They can point them in the right direction. You can go to your whichever regional office, and I'm sure you can find projects. And I agree, the intent of the dedicated hunter program was to get people out and involved and helping out and serving. And, and it's an extra thing, and just, I think what happened, and probably my speculation would be the reason for the bigger increase is to probably incentivize people to actually do the service instead of just buying the hours. Is that correct?
That is our thought process there, just
Okay.
to get that back to balance for sure.
And I would support that as well.
Well, if there's no other comments, I would say, can we make a motion to approve the fee structure as proposed? With the, the rest. Mhm.
I'll second that.
I don't think your mic's on.
Oh, yeah, I didn't have my mic on. We have a motion by Dana to approve the remainder of the fee schedules as presented by the division, seconded by Kirk. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
I'd like to talk a little bit about it. I agree that the increases need to happen, and I wish, I guess it's been brought up in another RAC, but I wish there was a way that we could lock in the prices for at least 5 years, or increase the prices so we could lock them in for 10. The cost is obviously going up. The cost of a seasonal employee is going up. The cost of biologists is going up. Equipment, gasoline to get to places. We definitely, the North American model is sportsmen pay for the wildlife and the work that's done for the wildlife, and I think that's important. I agree, I think, with some of the people here that I would pay more money to do this, and I think most people would. It would just be nice to see this be a every 5 or 10 year reevaluation, so sportsmen would know when their prices would be going up, and could make more comments on this kind of stuff, and be more transparent about where the cost is coming from.
My comment to that is, given the last 3 years in this world, 4 years, that I don't think we can lock ourselves down into 5 or 10 years. And I think we would maybe be setting ourselves up for failure with that. So I think, to have an estimate of hopefully that, well, we don't say hopefully, I guess, the current math would suggest that this is good for 4 to 6 years, but it still gives us the flexibility if something crazy happens to be able to adjust them.
Yeah, I think nobody can do that effectively because you can't predict the future. Nobody can tell me what gas prices are going to be in December. Nobody can tell me right now what gas prices are going to be next week, much less 5 years down the road. I think so. The division does evaluate on an annual basis as they've stated. And I think that's statutory. I think the legislature has mandated that, every division within the state has to do that. They got to keep track of their expenditures and their intake of revenue. But you can't predict the future. I mean, as I appreciate what Charlie's saying, and I understand that it's nice to know what's coming. It would be wonderful if you knew exactly what the price of milk was going to be in 5 years, but there's no way to find that out, So we just have to do our best to roll with the punches, and sometimes it's less fun
Yeah,
anytime.
yeah, totally
Green.
understand. Not looking to change the motion, but it is something to consider in the future. If there is a way to start planning more for these things, I think that would be great.
Go ahead, Kirk. Okay, well, do we have any other comments? Okay, if we have no more comments or proposals or discussion, we can go on with a vote. Kirk,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Darren.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, I believe that now takes care of our agenda. My apologies for my mistake earlier. I gotta quit doing that sort of stuff. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Probably my turn. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Steve. Seconded by Eric. All in favor? You guys online want to stay all night?
Aye. You're gonna go through us again.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks for turning up, everybody.